Ladies and gentlemen, friends of Athens College, alumni, colleagues, welcome to this wonderful joint evening sponsored by SACA and Athens College. It is truly a pleasure to have you all here, and I want to welcome Professor Dusan Sijansky, who has come from Geneva to be with us and to say a few words about him. He is, as most of you know, Professor Emeritus of the University of Geneva, honorary, Chairman of the European Cultural Center Special, Advisor to the President of the European Commission for 10 years, Member of the Board of Directors of the Latsis Foundation, Geneva Chairman of the Swiss Committee for the Return of the Parthenon Marbles, and author of this recent book, The Federal Future of Europe, From the European Community to the European Union. I am sure that we will all share the pride that the Parthenon is a representative example of the high degree of architectural accomplishment attained by the 5th century BC by the Greeks. The monument lost a major part of its sculpture in the years 1801 to 1804, when Lord Elgin, the British ambassador to the High Gate, with a Sultan's firman, managed to extract about half the sculpture and decoration and bring it to England. From the first moment that the sculptures were removed from the Parthenon, reactions from Greeks began. Immediately after the establishment of the modern Greek state, the Parthenon restoration program began, and the monument became a national symbol and a World Heritage Monument. The repatriation of the sculptures is the dream of every Greek and many foreigners worldwide. The Athens College community has supported Greece's demand for the return of the ancient heritage within our school's mission to contribute to society as a beacon of Greek education, developing responsible global citizens and future leaders inspired by the Hellenic heritage and American and European liberal values. Yesterday, our students attended Professor Sijansky's 2 presentations and had many questions. Afterwards, a questionnaire was prepared by the direction for all of the students to fathom their perceptions and, importantly, their willingness and degree of commitment to engage in this noble cause for their return. We want to thank Professor Sijansky for his presentation today and yesterday, and for the copy of this wonderful documentary film that we're about to see, which will remain at Athens College. I also want to thank Dr. Fotis Beris, who made the connection for us, one of our distinguished alumni. And I want to thank Mr. Papadiamandis, the president of SACA, for co-sponsoring this with Athens College. Mr. Papadiamandis.
Καλησπέρα και καλώς ήρθατε και σας ευχαριστούμε που είσαστε εδώ για αυτήν την εκδήλωση μαζί μας. Και είναι και μεγάλη χαρά μας να σας υποδεχθούμε. Πέρα από όσα υπόθηκαν από τον President για τον καθηγητή Σοτζάνσκι, θέλω και εγώ με τη σειρά μου να τον ευχαριστήσω που θα μας δώσει την ευκαιρία να δούμε την πολύ ενδιαφέρουσα ταινία που έχει επιμεληθεί και να συμμετάσχουμε στη συζήτηση. Θέλω όμως να ευχαριστήσω και το Φώτη Μπερί του 69. Φώτη Μπερί, συμπέσαμε σε αυτό το κάμπους για 1 χρόνο. Έβγαινε και έμπαινα. Ήμουνα τέρας, όπως λέγαμε τότε. Μπορεί να έχω φάει και μερικές φαλιάρες μετά τότε έθιμα από το Φώτη. Αλλά, εν πάση περιπτώσει, μας ενώνει πάντοτε αυτός ο δεσμός του σχολείου και όταν ήρθε να με δει, μου είπε κάτι το οποίο μου άρεσε και ήταν πάρα πολύ κολεγιακό. Έχουμε μία πολύ ενδιαφέρουσα παρουσίαση του θέματος, μακριά από υπεραπλουστεύσεις. Μία καινούρια, μια φρέσκια ματιά. Μου άρεσε πάρα πολύ, τον ευχαρίστησα, το συνδιοργανώσαμε. Φώτης Μπερής είναι γιατρός, είναι διακεκριμένος αιματολόγος, καθηγητής στη Γενέβη και μέλος της Ελβετικής Επιτροπής για την Επανένωση των Μαρμάρων του Παρθενώνα. Αγαπάει όμως ακόμα το σχολείο μας και το δείχνει και με αυτή την πράξη. Φώτη, σε ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ και σου θυμίζω ότι υπάρχει το ελβετικό chapter, το οποίο είναι υποίδρυση. Περιμένω και από σένα και από όλους τους συναποφύτους που είναι στην Ελβετία τη συμμετοχή σας. Και πάλι ευχαριστώ, δεν θα καθυστερήσω άλλο, θα περάσω τον λόγο στον Προφέσορ Σαντζάνσκι, ο οποίος θα κάνει μια πρώτη παρουσίαση, θα επακολουθήσει η ταινία και η συζήτηση. Και βεβαίως, όπως τα πάντα σε εκδηλώσεις του ΣΑΚΑ, θα κλείσει με cheese and wine. Last but not least, παράκληση. Κλείστε ή στο αθόρυβο τα κινητά σας. Ευχαριστώ πολύ. Προφέσορ.
Καλησπέρα σας. Ευχαριστώ που ήρθατε. Είμαι περήφημος να είμαι μαζί σας και να σας πω τι κάνουμε στην Ελβετία για να μας γυρίσουμε και τα Μαρμάρα. 2 λόγια για μένα, γιατί το Οδυσσέα είναι μεγάλη, θα μπορούσα να κάνω μια άλλη διάλεξη. Άρα γεννήθηκα στο Βελιγράδι, από εκεί όταν ο πόλεμος, δεύτερος πόλεμος έκανε. Ο πατέρας μας έστειλε στο Δούμπροβνικ, ξέρετε να είμαστε στη θάλασσα για να μπορούμε να φύγουμε. Στο Δούμπροβνικ έχω δει Γερμανούς που ήρθαν από το Σπλίτ και από τη Βοσνία και Ιταλούς που φύγανε γιατί που ήταν στο πλαίσιο στην Ελλάδα, ήταν κοντά στην Ελλάδα, ήρθαν να νομίζαν ότι θα πάρουν την Ελλάδα πολύ γρήγορα, μετά φύγανε και συμπληθήκαν και 2 στο Δούμπροβνικ. Δεν μπορώ να σας πω τι αισθάνομαι από το γιατί αυτό είναι μεγάλο σοκ που έχουμε στη ζωή όταν λες, νομίζω κανείς εδώ, όπως σας βλέπω, είσαστε, δεν έχετε χρόνια που έχω και κανείς δεν έχει ζήσει με την Γερμανούς εδώ. Ήθελα να σας πω, έχω 2 στη ζωή, έχω 2 όνειρα. Ένα είναι η Ηνωμένη Ευρώπη. Αυτό είναι το βιβλίο μου και άλλα βιβλία που έχω γράψει. Και άλλο είναι η Ηνωμένα τα Μάρμαρα. Αυτό θα σας μιλήσω και για ένα και περισσότερα για τα Μάρμαρα. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
La Grèce, c'est mon amour depuis toujours. Lorsque j'avais des problèmes lors d'un séjour en Grèce, je me rendais à l'Acropole. C'est un lieu sacré, symbolique de la culture européenne.
Le sculture del Partenone rappresentano, ne sono convinto, e fortunatamente non solo io, il picco più alto della cultura mondiale, perché è l'espressione della civiltà greca all'apice della sua storia, che lancia un messaggio di bellezza e di pace al mondo.
Les marbres du Parthénon comportent la frise, les métopes, les sculptures des frontons de ce monument exceptionnel construit par Phidias au siècle de Périclès, où Périclès a décidé contre l'opinion générale que la culture a la priorité sur les armes. Je suis de ceux qui pensent que c'est le premier film au monde qui a été fait en sculpture.
The marbles are an astonishing piece of narrative. It's a story, it's a one single story that goes all around the building.
They narrate a progression. It is this representation, perhaps, or an evocation of the Panathenaic festival, an event that is critical to the identity of ancient Athens. And so it is the idea of that story taking place, that narrative running around the building, that is critical to our understanding not only of what the marbles mean today, but what they meant in ancient Athens.
Ce premier film au monde de 160 mètres, il a été endommagé, coupé en deux.
Ever since the Parthenon sculptures were created in the 5th century BC by the master sculptor Phidias, they fell victim through the years to wars and religious intolerance. At one point, the temple was converted into a Christian church and later into a mosque after the Ottoman occupation of Greece in the 15th century. In the 17th century, the monument was ignited by Venetian bombardment, as the Ottomans had stored gunpowder inside the building, leading to serious damage. But the Parthenon's marbles were subjected to even greater harm when in 1801 Lord Elgin, British ambassador to the Ottoman Porte, clearly abused his power at a time when Greece was an occupied country, unable to defend its cultural heritage. On the basis of a permit or firman of questionable validity, of which only an Italian translation exists, Lord Elgin obtained permission to draw and make casts of some of the Parthenon marbles, and to carry off some fragments lying on the ground beneath the monument. And yet, gradually Elgin's men began to remove, in effect steal, more than half the existing sculptures, slicing off the backs of the blocks of the frieze and dismantling the pediment statues to ship them to Britain. The marbles suffered further damage when one of the ships sank. The salvage work nearly bankrupted Elgin, so he was forced to sell the sculptures to the British Parliament, which entrusted them to the British Museum in 1816. This year, 2016, marks the bicentenary of this absurd division of the surviving Parthenon sculptures between a museum in Athens and another in London, 1,500 miles from their natural and historical setting.
Look what we discovered. Of course, it is well known that the blocks that are still in Athens are 60 centimeters thick or more. However, the ones that are in London, because they were cut in half or in a third by Lord Elgin for transport facilities, are much thinner. In many ways, it's simultaneously architecture, urbanism, and sculpture. It is an architecture that is again part of a world of culture that is gone, but it's still part of our sensibility. You see the temple in the background and the sculptures right here in the foreground. This dialogue is what we want to continue, but this time with the actual marbles being reunited. It would be a pity not to be able to reconstitute it in its totality instead of having part of it real and part of it in plaster reproduction.
L'argument anglais, c'est que pendant longtemps, les Grecs n'avaient pas où mettre ces monuments. Eh bien, ils ont trouvé la meilleure façon de leur donner leur valeur totale.
The state-of-the-art Acropolis Museum, designed by the Franco-Swiss architect Bernard Tschumi in collaboration with Dimitri Pandemalis, was inaugurated in 2009. Through its use of highly transparent glass panels, it maintains this visual connection between its exhibits and the rock from which they originate. The Parthenon gallery on the top of the museum is aligned with the Parthenon itself, echoing the temple's dimensions, configuration and orientation. This means that the light coming from the west or the east illuminating the exhibited marbles is exactly similar to that which illuminates the temple itself.
Il est frappant de voir des contrastes avec les marbres qui se trouvent au British Museum et les marbres qui sont ici, exposés maintenant dans ce grand musée, un des plus beaux du monde, musée spécialisé pour l'Acropole. Il n'a que des sculptures de l'Acropole. Eh bien, le British Museum a classé ces monuments dans une galerie obscure. Les marbres m'ont agressé, ils sont tout près, en face, éclairés par une lumière artificielle. D'où d'ailleurs l'expression et en quelque sorte la révolte de Rodin, qui en sortant dit « Toutes les lumières électriques n'ont pas la force de les empêcher de rechercher éternellement la douce lumière d'Homère. »
Does the British Museum have a moral duty to return these objects? I think it does. I think what we should be thinking of here is the ethics at stake in this issue rather than the legality. It's a case of legitimacy rather than legality. And so I think the moral pressure on the British Museum is extremely important. It's pointing us towards another aspect of this whole issue, which is about ethics in the global world.
La Gran Bretagna a sua volta è abbeverata di cultura classica e sarebbe ora che capisse che sarebbe a vantaggio suo, dell'Europa e del mondo, restituire ad Atene, all'Acropoli e a questo magnifico museo quello che fu tolto in modo indecente 200 anni fa.
It's often said that if the marbles were returned to Athens, it would harm the British Museum's identity as a universal museum or an encyclopedic museum. On the contrary, I think it would be one of the greatest universal gestures the British Museum could make to return these objects. There's no reason why there could be any number of other positive solutions to what might be an immediate, seemingly, absence in the Duveen galleries. We could create new displays, we could have a new relationship with the Greeks, to borrow different Greek things. I think this would be an opportunity to show the Universal Museum as it is embodied in the British Museum as a generous museum, a true universal museum.
Je pense qu'il faut continuer dans cette ligne de pression, d'influence de toutes sortes, mais exclure le recours à la justice. En revanche, la meilleure des solutions, serait de trouver un accord avec le gouvernement britannique et avec le musée British Museum, accord qui prévoirait le retour des marbres ici où nous sommes actuellement, dans ce beau musée spécialisé. Ce retour serait accompagné des expositions constantes, régulières, à organiser dans le British Museum avec les biens et les monuments dont dispose la Grèce et qui se trouvent très souvent dans la cave des grands musées grecs.
I wanted first to tell you that you have seen the history presented by Patricia. She is my assistant for the research and presentation of many of those works we did. For example, a small booklet published on the history and comments in the same time when we did this movie or documentary movie. So I would like to complete this. The first thing I would like to mention is the mutilation which appears clearly in the case of comparison you can do between what we have in Athens, here in museum, and what we have in England. In England, as Rodin said, you are prisoner, and you have seen something very important. You are very close to these marbles in England. So, what we did in Louvre for Mona Lisa and for other pictures or whatever is to have a big distance, because otherwise when we pass and look, sometimes we are fragilizing all these sculptures, even if they are in marbles. This is the point I have personally. I suffered seeing them in Gauguin Gallery. I think it's very important to visit both theaters. What is significant, many of the journalists from England were against reunification of marbles here. Nevertheless, they visited the museum, saw this extraordinary picture you have of Acropolis, of Parthenon, and at the same time one of the most beautiful museums in the world. So this is and they change opinion and accepted that we should have this monument back to Athens. I will mention not only the relation with the ancient Greek culture, which is a richness. It is the culture of dialogue, completely different with the cultures in China. The president was here, he could confirm that. And in culture in India, for example. Totally different. You don't have in China the same dialogue. Here, when you do something, you have immediately the opposition, the critical ways, and so on. You can establish a dialogue and see what is the best way to compose, to have a compromise between two different parts. The Greek, at this time, the 5th century, was, as my friend Louis Godard mentioned in Italian, it's a peak of our civilization and of our culture, and is the source of European culture. Finally, the main point is that the beginning of this culture is the recognition of the persons, not of individuals. This is the difference with America. I believe that in American way of culture, it's individual. We have to be more person recognized in our culture. Is different. And the first doctrine to present this view of recognition of person, equality of person, was the Stoicism. Stoicism did before Christ, because many authors say in their books that Christianity brings us this. No, it is the beginning. I found it in Stoicism, which is quite important as a difference. This was the discussion I had many times with the Franco-Swiss author. He was Denis de Rougemont. With him, I collaborated for years. We were defining the culture, European culture, by saying we have common values, but we have a very rich diversity of cultures at the same time. This is the richness, exceptional richness of Europe in general. We saw many interesting arguments presented here. I will nevertheless mention one, and important, I think. For me, my life was dedicated to United Europe. As a student, I became very active for the United Europe. Then, after the movement, I wrote a thesis about the problem, which is finally very interesting problem, about the national federalism moving to the international or regional federalism, which is a big move. And therefore, I, like Odysseus in some way, have a long way going around the world, seeing different culture, visiting them, and studying the way in which they try to be united, more solidarity. This, what happened in Europe, is a miracle, and we have to continue and to keep this miracle. Because not only for the arguments I mentioned before, but also because we have this richness. You go to Acropolis, where I said I was going in 56, 57, when I spent 1 year in Greece, going and seeing the change, even if I was shocked and I had some stress, I go to Acropolis and change the mood. You are in the other world. It is the ancient Greek world. And therefore, I am accepted when the ambassador of Greece asked me to become the president of the Swiss collective. And we did what we could to help return. As I was traveling a lot, I had always the impression when you are out of Europe, when you are in America, South America, where I was for many times, Asia and so on, you see differently Europe and you feel as European. And you are even, they ask me, you are a European in many countries. So this is the reality on different distances. The thing it's very important for me is among the cultural symbols of this culture. The marbles, the Parthenon is the first one in the world. We have other symbols, of course. We have, for example, Cathedral de Paris, and other cathedrals, and other. In Rome, we have an exceptional thing also. But this is the most, in my view, the most important. Therefore, we have to engage in the dialogue, we hope, with the government and with the museum. The museum is refusing, because this is very common thing. When you ask the government, he answers, it's a mission of the museum. When you go to the museum, you have to ask the government. So this is the ping pong between two authorities, different authorities, and the mission given to the museum in Britain. Acropolis and Parthenon is the finality, it's our source of our culture, the main source. I know we have also the Roman source, we have also Christianity, we have also contribution and assimilation of other culture during the history, but the main source are those three pillars, and in my view, represented by Parthenon marbles. These marbles, which Lord Elgin pretended, he claimed that he will protect them, he will save them, and so on. He mutilated. First, before, and you have seen the declaration of the architect of the new museum, it's quite clear. They were sliced, they were transported, they sunk, and so on. Is it the protection of the marbles? I am asking the question. is it protecting the marbles, when in 1938 British Museum, in some way we don't know who, decided to clean them, because the climate in Britain was very, very bad, as you know, especially this time. And they cleaned them so well that they fragilized the marbles. You can see on the British Museum, they recognize the error they did. And you cannot compare the techniques we have here in Athens, in the museum, for the protection of the marbles. So the difference is very great. I think it was my mission from the beginning, indirectly, because I was at one in Lausanne, student of the father of the architect of the museum. And we learned many things about Egypt, architectonic contribution, but especially for the Greek. So you see the link during my life was impressive. I discovered, and I had a message from the architect who said to me, unfortunately, I am in Paris, I cannot come to listen and to see. This is the friendship also among the people who are trying to get them back, only the marbles. This is very important. We don't have to claim, for example, the Venus of Milos, the Victory, and so on. Statues, different statues. Why? Because the marbles are an exceptional case. What is the marble? If you look at them, you see a sort of movie along, and you can see the cavalry. You have seen them. You know that Nevsky, the film of the Soviet director, this film was inspired by the cavalry of the museum. So it's very interesting to see that even in some parts of the world which we are not used to accept or to wait for such a thing, the museum is known. He is inspiring people, and I must confess, I was always inspired. And I saw from the beginning the difference between what Egypt has. In Egyptian culture, it's beautiful, it's magnificent, but it's static. You have the figures like that. In the culture, sculpture, Greece, you have a dynamic. It's quite different. It's not the same mind. It's not. So you see the dialogue with Socrates, the way of method he had, the Plato, and especially Aristotle, who was the first constitutional who did a comparison between constitution and this time. It's quite incredible what we have. And every day you discover new monuments in Greece. Therefore, I think we should try to compensate England and the museum if they give back for reunification. We should give them many other things, artifacts, knowing that it's better not to claim just to have them for some months, because we are expecting the 200 years of the beginning of the history of Greek independence. The move by Prime Minister, I think was an error. Nevertheless, it was an error with good effects. Why? Because after that, many people become interesting in this, and you had in many papers, movies, documentaries, and so on, about the marbles. It was a new discussion, new dialogue about the marbles. And The Guardian in England is published every month 5 to 6 articles about the marbles. It's really something very important for us. What can we do and why we have to move in this case? Parthenon marbles, which is in period, as you know, of Pericles, is Phidias sculpture, of course, with help of many of young people who were working with Phidias. We know that. But we know also that this way they did something very exceptional, inspired by, they presented the democracy, they presented many scenes of the life at this moment. And I think this is exceptional, this period, to see that we have a movie. Now I ask you, would you cut a movie of some actors we have in the movie museums, in two? One in the United States and other in here or somewhere else? No. We refuse to cut the movies. The movies are entire. And we have to do the same for the marbles. We have to have them together. Secondly, if you compare what Rodin said, if you go to London, I am sorry to say, you are depressed after visiting the marbles. If you go to the new museum of Acropolis, you are inspired by the marbles. It's quite a different atmosphere. Atticus light is exceptional light. The climate here we have in Greece is beautiful, and it's Mediterranean, good, equilibrated. I think I would like to live my old days in Greece, but I'm obliged to be in Geneva because the university created a new center for European studies, Excellency Center, which is after the master, and this center is working on different European problems, connected with marbles. Whenever we have the opportunity, we speak also about the marbles and necessity to reunify these beautiful things. You know that what we said before, and they mentioned it, Firmin. There was no Firmin. And Bissos, he is a very well-known lawyer in South Africa. He was Mandela's lawyer, defending him when he was in prison. Bissos said, a Firmin, we have many Firmin. We can go to the museums or to the archives they have in Constantinople or Istanbul, and we can find. We tried to find them. We couldn't find anything. The only thing is a small paper. You have it exposed in London, in Italian. You have no signature, nothing.
And Bishop said, any firmin that I saw was first in the name of Allah. Then the signature or at least the temple or something from the Sultan, from the highest authority at this time. We don't have such things. And I am sure that Lord Elgin, as I knew about his character, because he had also in his family a famous other Lord Elgin who went to China and took many things from China. So they are used. I think it's something they have in their blood. So Lord Elgin bribed. And we know very well that this time occupation by Ottoman Empire, bribing, corruption was a very, very traditional thing. It was generally used. So he did it probably at the level here in Athens. And even in this letter, his mandate permission was very limited to design, to take some parts if they are fallen and lost, or we can say lost in some way, they can take them. Or what he did is took more than half of this exceptional movie. So it's a tragedy, really, because he is a theft. He took that. Now what happened, as mentioned in the movie, he wanted to go back to England and crossing France, he was captured, put in jail for 3 years. When he was back in England, he was, of course, not exceptionally surprised to see that he has to divorce of the rich woman he had. She was not accompanying him in Athens or in Constantinople. So he proposed to Parliament, who bought them, but paid a small sum. He was not very glad about that. The Parliament had a discussion and decided by majority, of course, but some opposition also decided to give them as a mission to the British Museum. After that, there was a statute and rules established how to keep them, how to diffuse them, how to eventually lend them, but nothing back. And today, when the Prime Minister proposed a landing way for 221, I see the ladies coming, so I am distracted by this way. The conclusion on this point is that never we had a proof that he had the permission to take them to England. And second conclusion is that during this adventure and during this trip, he mutilated not only in Athens, but also in England. This is the first step I wanted to present to you. The second point for me is that his intention was a bad intention. In fact, he thought, he was convinced that he will become rich by this move. And I don't believe that he was thinking really that by taking them, by putting them, transferring them to England, he will gain a lot, that he will be a very authority in the case of claiming protecting the jewels of European culture. One other thing which moved me very much is that they called them Elgin marbles. How can you go and change the name? These are marbles done by Phidias. What is the copyright we have? If I were rich, I would go to Paris to ask to lend me or to give me or to buy the Mona Lisa, and I will put Dusan Sijansky's Mona Lisa. It's stupid, but it still works. And I am impressed to see that even in Greece sometimes some writers still use Elgin marbles. This is a big error. It's not Elgin marble. He just kept them. This is the one of the point which is my critical point about this. Some conclusions and some proposals. You know the history, you know many things. I think I completed a little some of the aspects. The first point is we don't have to go to court. And I always quote the Thucydides, who said, the justice exists between equal powers. How can you imagine the justice just and right between Greece and UK? They are considering them great powers. They are Brexit is still the mythology, as in some way the marbles present the mythology. And this point in mythology, I said that my impression is that this is the first act of psychologists, because in my view it is the projection of the Greeks at this time, of wishes, of whatever they wanted to do and couldn't do. This was transmitted through the gods and through the different adventures they had. Not always very, very right, very legitimate. The second point, as I said before, is that we have to go with the line. We don't have to move one part or the other. So we don't have to, as mentioned by the president, my friend, president of Greek Republic, and as mentioned also with the by Prime Minister, asking help from China or from other countries outside Europe. The first step is to have engaged the European Union and the Europeans in this battle. Not because if you go to other cases, you change the mentality. It's quite different cases. So they will say, you are creating a precedent which will have a big effect on everywhere and every cases in the world. So I prefer personally to have limited way. Of course, we can complete, as you completed it in the UN Assembly, with the resolution of the UN, but implementation in UN is much less effective than the implementation which we suffered in many cases, and especially in Greece. You have seen the implementation of austerity you had. It was a real tragedy. I was trying to be against this way, but it was very difficult. Third point, to insist that the climate here is real environment for the marbles. And to mention, of course, not only Rodin, but many people who knows and compares the climates in the two. Third point, we have not to go lending procedure. I am against lending. It is very costly to move the marbles. It is impossible to move them frequently and so on. I believe we have to ask for the reunification, for the return. In compensation, we should promise to have exhibitions regularly in other countries, in England, and even to give some of artifacts we have in our museums. Not exhibited, but we have a lot of richness which we could compensate the value of the reunification, which is our main name. I don't know if I am in the third or in the fourth, but as you see, I was against the exchange. We have to use better a strategy through internet. We don't influence enough the young people. Yesterday I gave the conference to the young μαθητές από το Κολλέγιο, and they were enthusiastic, so that I had the impression I am a star, rocky star, and not professor playing, asking the return of the marbles. So it was exceptional, wasn't it? Yeah, you confirm. Good, thank you. Third point, after internet, we have to move to other questions. And our main objective today is to build, to propose to the President of the Commission, to the Parliament, European Parliament, and to other active persons, to propose the creation of the Agency for Cultural Heritage of Europe, which will be able to propose the common ownership. This discussion of who has the ownership is completely madness. It's the way to give up, because you cannot prove, the museum cannot prove, but we are a small country and we have to go to Europe. You have to remember also that at the time of Pericles, Greece was Europe, in fact. All around the Mediterranean was visited, was in some colonized by Greek at this time. So it was a different environment. We were not in the same time. We have to think about the differences. Therefore, we are with Professor Nikos Skandamis, friend of mine, who is attached to this Center of Excellency for European Studies at the University of Geneva. We will propose the creation of this agency in the future for the next year. And this agency would support the ownership, common ownership, but at the same time the return or the reunification of the marbles. This is my next step for the reunification. And I hope, as I said to the young people, we are not so young, and I first, but as I said, I hope you will engage and help us. We need help, because many people still is very conservative and doesn't like the idea to bring back the marbles, but not asking anything else, because otherwise we will lose. Thank you very much.